Days before Christmas, my grandson arrived at my door at 3 a.m., completely covered in mud. He said, "Grandma, please don't tell Mom I'm here." Hours later, my daughter-in-law accused me of kidnapping. When the police arrived, I showed them what he had left in my coat pocket. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The knock came at 3:07 a.m., 3 days before Christmas. I know the exact time because I'd been awake for hours, watching the digital clock on my nightstand tick forward with that peculiar insistence that only insomnia brings. At 62, sleep had become something of a luxury, though I'd grown accustomed to the quiet hours when the farmhouse settled into itself, creaking and sighing like an old woman easing into her favorite chair. But this sound was different, urgent. 3 sharp raps against the front door's weathered wood. My heart lurched before my mind could catch up. Nobody visits at 3 in the morning with good news. I pulled on my robe, the thick blue one my son Peter had given me 2 Christmases ago, and made my way down the stairs, each step protesting beneath my weight. Through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could make out a small figure, hunched and trembling. When I opened the door, a gust of December wind nearly knocked me backward, bringing with it the smell of rain-soaked earth and something else. Fear, perhaps. Or desperation. "Grandma." The voice was small, cracked. "Don't tell Mom I'm here." My grandson stood on my porch, barely recognizable. Mud caked his clothes from collar to ankle, streaked across his face, matted in his sandy hair. 12 years old, nearly as tall as me now. But in that moment he looked 6 again, the way he had when he'd wake from nightmares and come padding into my room during their weekend visits. Matthew. I pulled him inside, felt his whole body shaking as I wrapped my arms around him, mud and all. "Good Lord, child, what happened?" He pressed his face against my shoulder, and I felt wetness there, tears mixing with rainwater and dirt. His breathing came in ragged gasps, the kind that precede a full breakdown. She can't know. Promise me, Grandma. Promise you won't tell her." "Let's get you cleaned up first," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the alarm bells clanging in my head. "Then we'll talk." I guided him to the bathroom, turned on the shower, found him clean clothes from the drawer where I kept things from his visits. Pajamas that were probably too small now, but they'd do. While the water ran, I stepped into the hallway and listened to him crying. Really crying. The kind of sobs that shake a person from the inside out. My hands trembled as I gripped the doorframe. In all the years since my husband Thomas passed, I'd learned to trust my instincts. They'd kept this farm running, kept me one step ahead of the bank when money got tight, kept me sharp when everyone assumed age would dull me. And right now, every instinct I had screamed that something was very, very wrong. 20 minutes later, Matthew sat at my kitchen table wrapped in an Afghan, hands cupped around hot chocolate I'd made from the packet mix I kept for his visits. The mud had revealed the boy underneath, pale, exhausted, with a bruise darkening along his left cheekbone that he definitely hadn't had at Sunday dinner 3 days ago. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" I asked, settling into the chair across from him. He shook his head but didn't meet my eyes. "Matthew." I reached across the table, let my hand rest near his. "You have to tell me what happened. How did you get here? It's 8 miles from your house." "I walked." His voice was barely a whisper. "Through the woods, mostly. Stayed off the roads. 8 miles. Through December woods in the middle of the night. The temperature had been hovering just above freezing. He could have died out there." "Why?" I asked simply. His jaw clenched, and for a moment I saw his father in him. Peter, my son, with that same stubborn set to his features when he was determined not to cry. But Matthew was still a child, and whatever dam he'd built inside himself finally broke. "She's going to send me away." The words tumbled out in a rush. I heard them fighting about it. Mom and Dad. "She wants to send me to that school, the boarding school in New Hampshire, the one for troubled teens." He made air quotes with his fingers, bitter beyond his years. "She said I'm too difficult, that she can't handle me anymore, that I'm making everything worse for the family." My blood went cold. Chrissy, my daughter-in-law, had always been particular about appearances, about control. But this? "Your father agreed to this?" Matthew's silence was answer enough. I can't go there, Grandma. His eyes finally met mine, desperate and pleading. The kids they send there. I looked it up online. It's not a school. It's like a prison. They have these behavior modification programs. Kids have died there. Some of them tried to run away and... Stop. I held up my hand, my mind racing. When were they planning to send you? Tomorrow. The day before Christmas Eve. A van is supposed to come pick me up in the morning. That's why I left tonight. I had to... His voice cracked. I couldn't let them take me. I stood up, walked to the window over the sink, and looked out at the darkness beyond. The farmhouse sat on 60 acres, most of it woods, at the end of a long gravel drive. Isolated. Private. I'd always loved that about this place, the solitude Thomas and I had built our life around. Now that isolation felt suddenly dangerous. Your mother will have noticed you're gone by now, I said, thinking aloud. She'll be looking for you. She won't know where I went. I climbed out my bedroom window. She thinks I'm asleep. I turned back to face him. Matthew, honey, she's going to call the police. When she finds your room empty, she'll... Let her. There was steel in his voice now, the same steel I'd had at his age when I'd left my own troubled home. I don't care. I'm not going back. I should have called Chrissy right then. I should have called Peter. I should have done a dozen things that might have prevented what was coming. Instead, I said, You're exhausted. Go upstairs to the guest room and sleep. We'll figure this out in the morning. He hesitated, studying my face as if trying to determine whether he could trust me. I promise, I said quietly. I won't let anyone take you somewhere you shouldn't go. It was a promise I didn't yet understand the cost of keeping. Matthew trudged upstairs, and I heard the guest room door close. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the familiar trappings of my life. The herbs hanging to dry by the window, the ancient stove that had cooked 10,000 meals, the photographs on the refrigerator showing happier times. My hand found my coat pocket without thinking. A nervous habit. My fingers brushed something that hadn't been there before. Something small and hard and rectangular. I pulled it out. A USB drive. Black, no bigger than my thumb, with a piece of masking tape on it. Written in Matthew's careful handwriting was a single word. Evidence. I stared at it. This tiny thing no heavier than a breath, and felt the floor tilt beneath me. Whatever was on this drive, Matthew had risked everything to bring it to me. Had trusted me, only me, with whatever truth it contained. The farmhouse suddenly felt very large and very empty around me. The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 a.m. In a few hours, Chrissy would wake up. She'd find Matthew's room empty. And then, my phone buzzed on the counter, loud in the silence. I looked at the screen. Chrissy calling. My hand hovered over the phone as it continued to vibrate, demanding an answer. In that frozen moment, I understood that whatever I did next would change everything. There would be no going back, no pretending this was just a family misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with apologies and hot coffee. The phone went to voicemail. Immediately, it started ringing again. I picked it up. Chrissy, where is he? Her voice was ice. No preamble, no greeting. I know he's there, Sharon. Put my son on the phone, right now. I don't know what you're... Don't. The word cut like a blade. Don't lie to me. I checked the GPS on his phone. The last ping was from your property before he turned it off. He's there, and you're going to send him home immediately, or I'm calling the police and reporting a kidnapping. Kidnapping? The word came out sharper than I intended. Chrissy, that's absurd. He's my grandson. A grandson you're harboring against his parents' wishes. That's called custodial interference, Sharon. It's a crime. You have 1 hour to bring him home, or I'm pressing charges. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in one hand, USB drive in the other, and felt the trap closing around me. Chrissy wasn't bluffing. She never bluffed. She was a lawyer, sharp as broken glass and twice as cutting. She knew exactly how to weaponize the system. But I'd made a promise to a terrified child, and I'd learned, in 62 years of living, that some promises are worth the cost of keeping them. I looked down at the USB drive again. Evidence. Whatever was on this drive, Matthew believed it was worth running away for, worth risking everything. I walked to my husband's old study, powered up the ancient desktop computer I mainly used for email and online banking, and slid the drive into the port. The screen flickered to life. One folder appeared, labeled simply, Mom's Files. Inside were dozens of documents, medical records, financial statements, emails, text messages, and videos. Dozens of videos, each dated and time-stamped. I clicked on the most recent video, dated 2 days ago. Chrissy's face filled the screen, but she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at something, someone, off-screen. Matthew, I realized. This was recorded from his perspective, probably on a phone or tablet she didn't know he had. "You're being melodramatic," Chrissy was saying, her tone clinical, detached. "This isn't a punishment. It's a treatment facility." "It's not a treatment facility," Matthew's voice, desperate. "I read the reviews, Mom. I talked to someone whose brother went there. You'll thank me when you're older, when you're successful and disciplined and not this." She gestured vaguely, disgust flickering across her features. "This emotional mess. Dad, please." Matthew's voice cracked. "Tell her." The camera panned slightly and I saw my son, Peter, standing against the wall with his arms crossed, looking anywhere but at his son. "Your father agrees with me," Chrissy said. "We've discussed this extensively. You need more structure than we can provide at home, professional intervention." "I don't need intervention. I need you to listen to me. Lower your voice." Chrissy's words were clipped, controlled. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This inability to regulate your emotions, to accept authority. It's concerning, Matthew. The therapist agrees. I've met with the therapist twice. She doesn't even know me." "She knows enough." Chrissy stood up, and the camera angle shifted as Matthew apparently stepped back. "The van comes tomorrow morning at 7. You'll be packed and ready. This discussion is over." The video ended. I sat back in the chair, my hands shaking. I'd seen Chrissy's controlling tendencies before, the way she managed every aspect of their household like a corporate project. But this was something else entirely. This was a mother preparing to ship her son away, not because he needed help, but because he was inconvenient. I clicked on another file. An email exchange between Chrissy and Peter from 2 weeks ago. "Chrissy, he's not fitting the image we need. The Greenbriers asked why he wasn't at Oliver's party. I had to make excuses. Peter, he had a lot of homework that weekend. Chrissy, he had social obligations. This is what I'm talking about, Peter. He's too sensitive, too withdrawn. It reflects poorly on us. The Riverside Academy program will fix this." "Peter, that seems extreme. He's just going through a phase." "Chrissy, a phase?" He cried during the company dinner, at 12 years old, in front of partners. "This isn't a phase. This is a problem we need to solve before it impacts our social standing any further." The words blurred on the screen. I sat there, reading email after email, document after document. A pattern emerged, clear, unmistakable, damning. Chrissy wasn't sending Matthew away because he was troubled. She was sending him away because he embarrassed her. The USB drive held months of evidence, conversations recorded without her knowledge, screenshots of text messages, financial records showing the astronomical cost of Riverside Academy, nearly $80,000 for a 6-month program. And deeper still, I found something that made my blood run cold. A contract, signed by both Chrissy and Peter, a waiver acknowledging the intensive nature of the program, releasing the facility from liability for injuries sustained during behavioral correction procedures. I'd heard of places like this, seen the documentaries, read the investigative reports. They promised to transform difficult children through discipline and structure. What they delivered was trauma, and my son had signed off on sending his own child there. I was still staring at the screen when headlights swept across my front windows. A car door slammed, then another. I stood up, my heart hammering, and walked to the window. 2 police cruisers sat in my driveway, their lights painting the darkness in red and blue. And standing between them, wrapped in a designer coat, her face a mask of righteous fury, was Chrissy. She'd made good on her threat. 1 hour and 3 minutes after her call, she'd brought the police to my door. I ejected the USB drive and slipped it into the pocket of my robe before walking to the front door. Through the window, I could see Chrissy speaking to the officers, her gestures animated, perfected, the concerned mother whose child had been stolen in the night. She'd always been an excellent performer. I opened the door before they could knock. Sharon McCarthy? The first officer was young, maybe 30, with the careful politeness of someone who'd rather be anywhere else at 4:30 in the morning. His nameplate read, Officer Mendez. That's right. Ma'am, we've received a report that you may be harboring a minor against the wishes of his legal guardians. He glanced at his notes. Matthew McCarthy, age 12. Is he here? Behind him, Chrissy's eyes bored into me, cold and triumphant. My grandson arrived here a few hours ago, I said calmly. He was cold, wet, and frightened. I did what any grandmother would do. I took him in. Without notifying his parents? The second officer spoke now, older, with a weathered face that suggested he'd seen too much in his career. Sergeant Kowalski. That's a problem, Mrs. McCarthy. I was planning to call in the morning. She's lying. Chrissy stepped forward, her voice sharp. I called her immediately when I discovered Matthew missing. She denied having him. That's custodial interference, officers. I want her arrested. Chrissy, that's not what happened, isn't it? She pulled out her phone, swiped through screens. Here, the call log, 4:17 a.m. I asked her directly if Matthew was here. She said she didn't know what I was talking about. Mendez looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, is that accurate? I measured my words carefully. My grandson was asleep upstairs. I hadn't had time to process the situation. The law is clear, Chrissy interrupted. She's not his legal guardian. She has no right to keep him here without our consent. I'm his mother, and I want my son returned to me immediately. Mom, no! We all turned. Matthew stood at the top of the stairs, still wrapped in the Afghan, his face pale in the dim light. He'd obviously been listening. Please, he said, his voice cracking. Please don't make me go back. Chrissy's expression softened instantly, a transformation so sudden it was almost theatrical. Sweetheart, you're confused. You're upset. But this isn't the answer. Running away to Grandma's house in the middle of the night. You could have been hurt. We've been worried sick. You weren't worried. You were angry that I messed up your plan. What plan? Sergeant Kowalski asked, his tone sharpening. Chrissy's smile never wavered. Matthew has been struggling lately, emotionally, academically. We've arranged for him to attend a therapeutic boarding school that specializes in helping children through difficult transitions. It's an excellent program, very expensive, and we believe it's in his best interest. Unfortunately, he's been resistant to the idea. Because it's not a school. Matthew started down the stairs. Matthew. My voice stopped him mid-step. Not now. He looked at me, betrayed. But something in my expression made him pause. Kowalski studied us all with tired eyes. Here's how this is going to work. Matthew, you're a minor. Your parents have legal custody. Unless there's evidence of abuse or neglect, you need to go home with your mother. There is evidence, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Chrissy's face went very still. Excuse me? Evidence, I repeated, meeting her gaze. Of why Matthew felt he had no choice but to run. Sharon, don't. There was warning in her voice now, the velvet glove slipping to reveal iron underneath. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse than kidnapping charges? I asked. Worse than having police show up at my home at 4 in the morning? I think we're past worse, Chrissy. Mendez held up his hands. Ladies, let's all take a breath. Mrs. McCarthy, what kind of evidence are you talking about? I felt the USB drive burning in my pocket. Everything Matthew had entrusted to me, every piece of his desperate attempt to document his own life, to prove that his fear was justified. It was all right there, one small piece of plastic away from either saving him or destroying what remained of this family. The boarding school they've chosen, I said slowly, has a documented history of abusing students. Children have been injured there. Some have died. Matthew has compiled extensive research showing— That's absurd, Chrissy cut in, her voice turning sharp as glass. Riverside Academy is fully accredited. They have excellent reviews and a stellar reputation. Sharon is simply repeating the hysterical claims of a child who doesn't want to face consequences for his behavior. What behavior? I asked. Being too sensitive? Crying at a dinner party? Not fitting into your perfect corporate image? Chrissy's eyes flashed, and I saw it then. The rage beneath the polished surface. You have no idea what you're talking about. You see him once a week, Sharon. We live with him every day. We see the mood swings, the defiance, the complete disregard for rules. He's 12 years old. He's out of control. Enough. Kowalski's voice cut through our argument. Mrs. McCarthy, do you have actual evidence of abuse or neglect in the home? Physical injuries? Documentation from teachers or counselors? Anything concrete? I hesitated. The USB drive contained Chrissy's own words, her own emails showing her real motivations. But would that be enough? Would police officers at 4 a.m. wade through hours of recordings and documents? Or would they simply see a grandmother interfering in her son's marriage, trying to undermine parental authority? I have documentation, I said finally, but I need time to— She has nothing, Chrissy said. She's stalling. Officers, I've been patient, but this is getting ridiculous. My son is standing right there. I want to take him home, now. Mendez looked at Matthew, who'd sunk down onto the stairs, his face buried in his hands. Son, has anyone hurt you? Has anyone in your home hit you or harmed you physically? Matthew shook his head, not looking up. Do you have enough food? A safe place to sleep? Another head shake. Or maybe a nod. I couldn't tell. Then I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do here. You need to go home with your mother. No. Matthew's voice was muffled by his hands. I won't go. Matthew, don't make this difficult, Chrissy said, her tone hardening. Get your things. We're leaving. I'll drag you out of here if I have to. Mrs. McCarthy! Kowalski's voice cracked like a whip. That kind of talk isn't helpful. Matthew, son, look at me. Matthew raised his head. His eyes were red, his face streaked with tears. I know this is hard, Kowalski said, his voice gentler now. But your parents have custody. That's the law. If there are problems at home, there are proper channels. Social services, family court. But right now, tonight, you need to go with your mother. Can I— Matthew's voice broke. Can I at least say goodbye to Grandma? Chrissy's jaw clenched, but she nodded curtly. The officers stepped back, giving us space. Matthew came down the stairs slowly, the Afghan trailing behind him like a sad cape. When he reached me, I pulled him into a hug. I'm sorry, he whispered against my shoulder. I thought you could— Listen to me, I whispered back, so quietly only he could hear. I'm not giving up. I promise you I'm not giving up. But I need time. I need to do this right. Can you be strong for a few more days? He nodded against my shoulder, his whole body trembling. The USB drive, I breathed, barely a sound. I have it. I'll use it. Trust me. He pulled back, and in his eyes I saw something like hope flickering back to life. Matthew, now. Chrissy's voice cut through the moment. He turned and walked to his mother, his shoulders hunched. She put her hand on his back, possessive, controlling, and guided him toward the door. Sharon, she said, pausing at the threshold. If you ever pull something like this again, I'll make sure you never see Matthew again. Legally, permanently. Are we clear? I didn't answer. I just watched as she led him out to her car. Watched as she buckled him into the back seat like he was cargo. Watched as she drove away with my grandson, taking him back to a house where he was being packaged up and prepared for shipment to a place that might break him. The police followed shortly after, Kowalski handing me a card with a number for family services. If you have real concerns, he said quietly, call them. Don't take matters into your own hands. Then I was alone. The farmhouse felt cavernous around me, every shadow a reproach. I'd failed him. Matthew had trusted me with everything, his fear, his evidence, his last desperate hope, and I'd let him be taken back. I walked back to the study, sat down at the computer, and opened the files again. This time, I went deeper, past the emails and recordings, into the financial documents. That's when I found it. A bank account. Opened 3 months ago in Matthew's name, but with Chrissy listed as custodian. The balance made my breath catch. $127,000. I clicked through the transaction history. A single deposit, made 6 months ago. The source, McCarthy Family Trust. My hands went cold. Thomas's trust, the one he'd set up before he died, meant to ensure Matthew's college education. Chrissy wasn't supposed to have access to it. The funds were locked until Matthew turned 18, managed by an independent trustee. But someone had accessed it. And that money, nearly half the trust's total value, had been withdrawn and placed in an account Chrissy controlled. I dug further, my heart hammering. Found more documents, a power of attorney form, supposedly signed by me, granting Chrissy access to trust funds for educational purposes. The signature looked like mine. The notary stamp looked legitimate. But I had never signed this document. I sat back, the pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. The boarding school cost $80,000 for 6 months. Chrissy had stolen from Matthew's trust to pay for it, and she'd forged my signature to do it. This wasn't just about control or appearances anymore. This was fraud. This was theft. And if I exposed it, Chrissy would know exactly where the information came from. She'd know Matthew had been collecting evidence against her. She'd know I was the one who'd helped him. The consequences would be severe. My phone buzzed. A text from Peter, my son, my boy who'd once brought me dandelions and told me I was the best mom in the world. Mom, what were you thinking? Chrissy is furious. She's talking about a restraining order. Please don't interfere anymore. This is our family, our decision. Stay out of it. I stared at the message, each word a knife. When had my son become this person? When had he learned to choose peace over protection, comfort over courage? Another text followed. Also, Chrissy wants the spare key to the farmhouse back. She doesn't trust you anymore. The spare key, the one I'd given them years ago for emergencies, for the times when I might need help, when family was supposed to mean something. I thought about Matthew's face in the moment before Chrissy led him away, the hope dying in his eyes. No, I wasn't staying out of it. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. This better be an emergency. Carol, I said. It's Sharon McCarthy. Remember when you told me if I ever needed a good lawyer, you owed me one? Carol Winters had been my husband's paralegal, had worked with us when we'd set up the trust, had been at Thomas's funeral with tears streaming down her face. She'd retired from the firm 5 years ago, but I knew she still kept her hand in, consulting for friends. Sharon, it's 5 a.m. I know. I'm sorry, but I need help. It's about my grandson, and it can't wait. There was a long pause. Then, tell me everything. So I did. I told her about Matthew showing up covered in mud, about the USB drive, about Chrissy's plan to send him away, about the forged power of attorney and the stolen trust funds. When I finished, Carol was quiet for a long moment. Sharon, she said finally, what you're describing, if it's true, it's serious. But it's also complicated. Chrissy is his mother. The law gives her a tremendous amount of latitude. And if you push this, if you make accusations like this, she will retaliate. Hard. I know. You could lose access to Matthew entirely. She could get a restraining order. She could make sure you never see him again. I know that too. Then why? Because he asked me to help him, I said quietly. And because no one else will. Another pause. Then Carol sighed. Okay, but we do this right. No more midnight harboring, no more confrontations with police at your door. We build a case. We document everything. We go through the proper channels. Agreed? Agreed. Send me copies of everything on that USB drive. I'll review it and we'll talk tomorrow. Today. Whatever day this is now. And Sharon? Don't tell anyone else about this. Not your friends, not your book club, nobody. Chrissy is smart and she's connected. The element of surprise is the only advantage we have. Understood. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. But sleep was impossible. Instead, I sat at my computer as dawn broke over the farm, copying files, organizing evidence, preparing for a battle I'd never wanted to fight. Outside, The world turned pink and gold, beautiful and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out beneath its sky. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I'm okay. She's watching me, but I'm okay. Thank you for trying. I love you, Grandma. Matthew. He'd found a way to message me. I typed back, I'm still fighting. Trust me. I love you too. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. The van comes in 2 days. Christmas Eve morning. 2 days. I had 2 days to stop this. I looked at the stack of evidence spread across the desk, at the forged signature on the power of attorney, at the damning emails, at Matthew's face frozen on the screen in one of the videos. 2 days to save my grandson from being sent away. 2 days to expose the truth about what Chrissy had done. 2 days before Christmas, when families were supposed to come together, and I was about to tear mine apart. But I'd made a promise, and some promises are worth any price. Carol arrived at the farmhouse at 10 a.m., carrying a leather briefcase that had seen better days and an expression that meant business. She was 70 now, her hair gone completely white, but her eyes were sharp as ever behind her glasses. "Show me everything," she said, declining my offer of coffee. We spent 3 hours in the study, going through every file on the USB drive. Carol made notes in a legal pad, her pen scratching across the page with increasing urgency. When we reached the forged power of attorney, she went very still. "This is big, Sharon. This isn't just parental overreach. This is criminal fraud." She pulled out her phone and snapped photos of the document. "Who's the trustee? The one Thomas appointed to manage the account? Harrison and Ross Financial. Mr. Harrison himself handled it. Gerald Harrison?" Carol's eyebrows rose. "He's meticulous. There's no way he released these funds without proper documentation. Which means Chrissy provided documentation that looked legitimate." "Exactly." Carol flipped through more pages. "The notary stamp on this power of attorney. I recognize the name. Martha Dunn. She works at First National Bank downtown. I'll need to verify with her whether she actually notarized your signature. And if she didn't, then we have proof of forgery, which opens up a whole other can of worms." Carol sat back, rubbing her temples. "But Sharon, you need to understand what we're up against. Chrissy's a lawyer. She'll have covered her tracks. And even with all this evidence, a judge might still allow her to send Matthew to that school. Parental rights are extremely protected in this state. So what do? We need more than just evidence of financial fraud. We need to prove that sending Matthew to Riverside Academy constitutes endangerment. Do you know anyone who's had experience with that facility? Any former students or families?" I thought for a moment. Matthew mentioned he talked to someone, a person whose brother went there, but I don't know who. We need to find them. Carol checked her watch. "I'll start making calls. I have contacts in child welfare, and I know a private investigator who specializes in troubled teen facilities. In the meantime, you need to—" My phone rang. Peter's name flashed on the screen. I answered cautiously. "Peter. Mom." His voice was strained, different from the cold text he'd sent hours earlier. "Can we talk? In person?" I glanced at Carol, who nodded. "When?" "Now I'm outside." I walked to the window. Sure enough, Peter's SUV sat in my driveway, engine running. He was alone. "Give me a minute," I told Carol, and walked to the front door. Peter stood on the porch, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. At 41, he still had his father's features, the strong jaw, the blue eyes, but there was a tiredness to him now, a weight that hadn't been there a year ago. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. We walked to the kitchen, and I poured him the coffee I'd offered Carol. He wrapped his hands around the mug, but didn't drink. "Chrissy doesn't know I'm here," he said finally. "She thinks I'm at the office." "Peter, what's going on?" He looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in my son's face in years. Fear. "I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did Matthew give you anything? Any files or documents or—" My heart stopped. "Why are you asking?" "Because Chrissy's been tearing the house apart looking for something. She says Matthew's been recording conversations, taking screenshots of private emails. She's convinced he made copies and gave them to someone before he ran." He set down the mug, his hands shaking slightly. Mom, if you have anything like that, you need to give it back. Chrissy's talking about charging you with theft on top of the kidnapping allegations. She's got connections at the DA's office. She can make this really ugly. Is that why you came here? To threaten me on her behalf? No. The word came out harsh, almost desperate. I came here to warn you. Chrissy's not stable right now. She's panicking about something, and when she panics, she gets dangerous. I've seen it before. People at her firm who crossed her, they ended up destroyed. Careers ruined, reputations shredded. She doesn't fight fair. Neither do I said quietly. Not when my grandson's safety is at stake. Peter closed his eyes. That school isn't. It's not as bad as Matthew thinks. Chrissy researched it extensively. They have good success rates, licensed therapists. They have a death rate, Peter. I kept my voice steady, but fury bubbled beneath. 3 students in the past 5 years. 1 from heat stroke during a disciplinary hike, 1 from suicide after being placed in isolation, and 1 from injuries sustained during what they called a therapeutic restraint. Those are the documented cases. There are probably more. Matthew told you that. Matthew showed me the evidence, autopsy reports, news articles, lawsuits that were settled out of court with NDAs attached. That's why Chrissy chose it, isn't it? Because they're good at covering up what happens there. Because they're expensive and exclusive, and they cater to families who have money and want their inconvenient children fixed quietly. Peter's face had gone pale. She said it was accredited. She said, she lied to you. I leaned forward. Or did you just not want to look too closely? Not want to ask uncomfortable questions? That's not fair, isn't it? Your son came to me covered in mud at 3 a.m, terrified, begging me not to let them take him. And you texted me to stay out of it. You chose her over him. She's my wife, and he's your son. The words exploded out of me. When did you become this person, Peter? Your father would be ashamed. The slap of those words hung in the air between us. Peter's face crumpled, and for a moment he looked 12 years old himself. The boy who'd scraped his knee falling out of the oak tree, who'd cried in my arms when his goldfish died. I don't know what to do, he whispered. I don't know how to fix this. Before I could respond, Carol appeared in the doorway. Sharon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to hear this. We followed her back to the study, where her phone was on speaker. A woman's voice, coming through tinny but clear, confirmed that Martha Dunn did notarize a document for Chrissy McCarthy 3 months ago, but it wasn't a power of attorney. It was a change of address form for Chrissy's own bank account. She's certain about this because she remembers Chrissy specifically. They had lunch afterward. Carol met my eyes. Sharon, the notary stamp on that power of attorney is fraudulent. Martha never notarized your signature. Chrissy faked the entire document. Peter's face had gone from pale to gray. What are you talking about? I pulled up the file on the computer screen, showed him the forged power of attorney. Your wife stole $127,000 from Matthew's trust fund to pay for that school, and she forged my signature to do it. No? Peter shook his head. No, there has to be an explanation. Chrissy wouldn't what? Commit fraud? Carol's voice was hard. The evidence is right there, Peter. Your wife forged a legal document, stole money from a trust she had no authority to access, and is planning to use that stolen money to send your son to a facility with a documented history of abuse. At what point do you stop making excuses for her? Peter sank into a chair, his head in his hands. This can't be happening. It is happening, I said. And we have 2 days to stop it. Are you going to help us, or are you going to keep protecting her? The question hung in the air. Outside, I heard a car door slam. Peter's head jerked up. Did you tell Chrissy where you were going? Carol asked sharply. No, He pulled out his phone, his face draining of color. She has a tracking app on my phone. I forgot. I was so upset We all moved to the window. Chrissy's car sat next to Peter's, and she was striding toward the front door, her expression thunderous. She knows, I said. She knows we have the files. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by pounding. Sharon, open this door right now. Carol grabbed her briefcase. Don't answer it. We need to. The sound of breaking glass cut her off. We ran toward the front of the house in time to see Chrissy standing in my entryway, having smashed the small window next to the door and reached through to unlock it from inside. "That's breaking and entering," Carol said. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." Chrissy stepped over the broken glass, her eyes fixed on me with laser focus. "I'm here to retrieve stolen property. Documents that were illegally obtained from my home. Matthew gave them to me willingly," I said. "Matthew is a minor. He has no legal right to share private family documents." She held out her hand. "The USB drive. Now." "The USB drive that contains evidence of your fraud?" Carol stepped forward. "I don't think so." Chrissy's gaze shifted to Carol, recognition flickering across her face. "Carol Winters. I should have known Sharon would run to you. Still playing lawyer even though you've been retired for years? I maintain my license for situations exactly like this. This isn't a situation. This is family business, and you need to leave. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is that evidence." Chrissy's composure cracked slightly, a vein pulsing in her temple. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. That money from the trust, I had every right to access it. It was for Matthew's education." "Then why forge Sharon's signature?" Carol asked. "If you had the right to access it, why not go through proper channels?" "Because proper channels would have taken weeks, and Matthew needed intervention immediately. His behavior had become dangerous." "Dangerous?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. "He's a sensitive child going through a difficult time. That's not dangerous. He tried to hurt himself." The words came out flat, calculated. The room went still. "What?" Peter's voice was barely a whisper. Chrissy turned to him, and I saw her strategy shifting in real time. Saw her pivoting to whatever story would serve her best. "I didn't want to worry you. 2 weeks ago, I found him in the bathroom with a bottle of sleeping pills. He said he wanted to make everything stop. That's when I knew we needed professional help. That's when I contacted Riverside." "That's a lie," I said. "Matthew would have told me." "Would he? Are you sure you know him as well as you think?" Chrissy's voice turned silky, dangerous. "You see him once a week, Sharon. You give him cookies and tell him he's perfect. You have no idea what it's like living with his mood swings, his outbursts, his constant defiance." "If what you're saying is true, where's the hospital report?" Carol interjected. "If a child attempts self-harm, it's protocol to take them to the emergency room for evaluation." Chrissy's jaw tightened. "I handled it privately. I called his therapist." "The therapist you met with twice?" I asked. "The one Matthew barely knows?" "You're twisting everything, misrepresenting." "No." Peter stood up, his voice stronger now. "You're the one twisting things. Matthew never tried to hurt himself. I would have known. I would have seen something." "You weren't there," Chrissy snapped. "You were at work, like always. You have no idea." "Then show us the therapist's notes," Carol said. "Show us any documentation of this alleged suicide attempt, because if it happened, there would be records. There would be a treatment plan. There would be something beyond your word." Chrissy's eyes narrowed. "I don't have to show you anything. I'm his mother. My word is enough." "Not in court, it isn't." The threat hung in the air. Chrissy's perfectly composed mask slipped further, and beneath it I saw something cold and calculating. "You want to take me to court?" she asked quietly. "Fine. Let's talk about what happens in court. I'll testify that Sharon has been exhibiting signs of dementia, that she's been forgetting things, getting confused, that her grip on reality is slipping. I'll bring in witnesses, Peter's co-workers, neighbors who've seen her wandering around the farm talking to herself. I'll paint a picture of an unstable old woman who can't be trusted with a child's safety." "That's defamation," Carol said. "Is it? Or is it a concerned daughter-in-law trying to protect her family?" Chrissy smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. "And Sharon, when social services starts investigating you, when they start looking into whether you're competent to even live alone, do you think you'll keep this farm? Do you think you'll keep your independence? Or do you think you'll end up in a facility yourself?" The threat was clear. She'd destroy me to protect herself. "As for those files," Chrissy continued, "I'll simply claim they were doctored. Deep fakes. Matthew's good with computers. Everyone knows that. I'll say he manipulated recordings to make me look bad because he was angry about the boarding school. Who do you think a judge will believe? A practicing attorney with an impeccable reputation? Or a disturbed child being manipulated by his senile grandmother? You're bluffing, I said, but my voice shook. Try me. Chrissy held out her hand again. The USB drive. Last chance. I looked at Peter, saw him frozen between his wife and his mother, his face a mask of anguish. Saw Carol calculating odds, running through legal strategies. Saw Chrissy's hand extended, steady and certain. And in that moment, I realized something. She'd made a mistake. She'd revealed too much, threatened too loudly. She'd shown us exactly how far she was willing to go, which meant she was scared. Truly scared. Which meant the evidence we had was even more damaging than I'd realized. No, I said. Chrissy's hand didn't waver. No? The USB drive isn't here. I've already made copies. Multiple copies, stored in multiple locations. You can tear this house apart and you won't find them. You can threaten me with dementia claims and court battles, but the evidence exists. It's out there. And if anything happens to me or Matthew, it all goes public. It was a bluff. The original USB drive was in my pocket, and the only copies were on Carol's phone. But Chrissy didn't know that. Her hand finally dropped. You're making a serious mistake. No, I said. I'm correcting one. You're not taking Matthew to that school. You're not stealing another dollar from his trust. And you're not going to threaten me in my own home. Peter, Chrissy turned to my son. Tell your mother she's being unreasonable. Tell her to give me those files. Peter looked at his wife, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Did you forge Mom's signature? Peter, yes or no? Did you forge it? Silence. Get out, Peter said quietly. Get out of my mother's house. Chrissy's composure shattered. You're choosing them over me? I'm choosing my son, the way I should have from the beginning. For a moment, I thought Chrissy might physically attack us. Her whole body tensed, her face contorting with rage. Then she smoothed her features into something cold and dead. You'll regret this, she said. All of you. I'll make sure of it. She turned and walked out, her heels crunching over the broken glass. We stood in silence, listening to her car start, listening to her drive away. Then Peter sat down heavily and began to cry. I let my son cry. Carol excused herself to make phone calls from the porch, giving us privacy. I sat across from Peter at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd done his homework as a child, where Thomas had taught him to play chess, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and all the small moments that make up a family. I didn't know, he said finally, his voice rough. About the money, about the forgery. I swear, Mom, I didn't know. But you knew about the school. You signed the waiver. He flinched. She showed me brochures, testimonials from other families. She said it was like a boarding school but with therapy, that it would help Matthew learn discipline and confidence. I thought, he broke off, rubbing his face. I thought I was helping him. Did you read the waiver? The part about releasing them from liability for injuries? She said it was standard legal language, that all schools have them because of insurance. I trusted her. He looked up at me, his eyes red. That's the problem, isn't it? I've been trusting her for so long I stopped questioning anything she said. When did it start? I asked gently. When did you start being afraid of her? The question hung between us. Peter stared at his hands. Maybe 2 years ago, around the time she made partner at the firm. She changed, got harder, more focused on image and status. He's sensitive, like Dad was. He cries easily, feels things deeply. Chrissy started seeing that as a weakness, something that reflected badly on her. On us. He swallowed hard. I should have stood up for him. I should have said no when she first mentioned the school. But every time I tried to argue with her, she'd make me feel stupid, irrational. She has this way of turning everything around, making you doubt your own judgment. That's called gaslighting, Peter. I know what it is. But knowing and admitting it are different things. He looked toward the broken window. She's going to come after you now, after all of us. You have no idea how vindictive she can be. I'm getting a pretty good idea. Carol came back inside, her expression grim. We have a problem. I just got off the phone with my investigator friend. She's been looking into Riverside Academy, and it's worse than we thought. The facility has been the subject of multiple investigations, but they keep getting shut down before anything goes public. Someone with serious money and connections is protecting them. Who? I asked. That's what concerns me. My friend hit a wall trying to find out. Records sealed, sources suddenly unwilling to talk. She said it has all the hallmarks of institutional protection, lawyers, payoffs, maybe even political connections. Carol set her briefcase on the table. Sharon, if we go after Riverside directly, we're not just fighting Chrissy. We're fighting a much bigger machine. So what do you suggest? We focus on the fraud, the forged signature, the stolen trust funds. That's concrete, provable. We file for emergency custody based on Chrissy's financial crimes and her attempt to use stolen money to send Matthew to a dangerous facility. It's not perfect, but it might be enough to get a judge to intervene. How long will that take? Peter asked. With an emergency motion? Maybe 3 or 4 days if we're lucky. Maybe a week. The van comes tomorrow morning, I said. Christmas Eve. We don't have 3 days. The words settled over us like snow. Outside, the December light was already fading, turning the farm into silhouettes and shadows. Somewhere in town, Matthew was in that house, counting down the hours until they came to take him away. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. Now. M. I opened my laptop, pulled up my email. A new message from an address I didn't recognize, no subject line. Inside was a video file. I clicked it. Chrissy's living room appeared on screen, the angle suggesting the camera was hidden somewhere up high. A bookshelf maybe, or a mounted decoration. Chrissy paced in front of the fireplace, her phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what it takes, she was saying. The van comes tomorrow at 7 a.m., and I need that child ready to go. No, he won't go willingly. That's why I'm paying you extra. Whatever it takes to get him in that van, you do it. Yes, I understand the risks. I'll sign whatever additional waivers you need. No, his father won't be a problem. I'll handle Peter. She paused, listening. The grandmother is trying to interfere. She has some files, recordings Matthew made. I don't know what's on them, but she's threatening to go public. Well, that's why I'm calling you. I need advice on how to discredit her. She's elderly, lives alone on that farm. How hard would it be to make a case for mental incompetence? My blood went cold. The voice on the other end was inaudible, but Chrissy smiled. Perfect. Yes, send me the paperwork. I'll have it filed first thing tomorrow morning, right before the van arrives. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, Matthew will already be enrolled and Sharon will be under psychiatric evaluation. She hung up and stood there for a moment, staring into the fireplace. Then she looked up, directly at where the camera must have been hidden, and I saw something in her expression that made my skin crawl. Not anger, not fear, satisfaction. The video ended. She doesn't know he's recording her, Carol said slowly. She has no idea he's documented all of this. How is he even doing this? Peter asked. How is he getting these videos to us? I thought about Matthew's computer skills, the way he'd always been ahead of other kids his age. He must have set up hidden cameras, linked them to cloud storage. Chrissy thinks she's monitoring him, but he's monitoring her. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. I have more, lots more. But, Grandma, you need to see something else. Check the second attachment. I opened the second file in the email. This one was a document, a medical record from a pediatric psychiatrist named Dr. Raymond Keller. I scanned the pages, my heart sinking with each line. The report detailed a complete psychiatric evaluation of Matthew, dated 3 weeks ago. According to Dr. Keller's assessment, Matthew exhibited signs of oppositional defiant disorder, moderate depression, and concerning behavioral issues including aggression toward authority figures. The report recommended immediate intensive residential treatment and noted that the patient's home environment may be contributing to his deteriorating mental state. It was signed by Dr. Keller and co-signed by Chrissy as his mother. This is what she'll use in court, Carol said, reading over my shoulder. This gives her medical backing for sending him to Riverside. It makes her look like a concerned mother following professional advice. But it's fake, Peter said. Matthew's never been aggressive in his life. He stopped. Wait, Dr. Keller. Chrissy mentioned that name. She said she'd taken Matthew to see him, but Matthew told me they only met twice. Twice isn't enough for a comprehensive evaluation like this, Carol said. This is at minimum a 6-week assessment. Multiple sessions, testing, observation. Someone wrote this report without actually evaluating Matthew properly. I kept reading and found the smoking gun buried in the appendices. A note recommending Riverside Academy specifically, praising its proven track record and innovative therapeutic approach. Dr. Keller has a relationship with Riverside, I said. He's probably on their payroll. He writes reports justifying admissions, gives parents the medical documentation they need, and in return, Riverside sends him referral fees. That's medical fraud, Carol said. And if we can prove it, we don't have time to prove it, I interrupted. The van comes in 13 hours. We sat in silence, the weight of impossibility pressing down on us. Chrissy had built a perfect trap, forged financial documents, a fraudulent psychiatric evaluation, legal papers already prepared to have me declared incompetent. She'd planned for every contingency, covered every angle, except one. She didn't know how much evidence Matthew had actually collected. We need to see Matthew, I said. Tonight. We need him to testify to what's really happening in that house. Chrissy will never let you near him, Carol said. Then we don't ask permission. I looked at Peter. You still have keys to the house? Mom, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that Chrissy is so focused on attacking us, she's forgotten to protect her flank. She's assuming we'll play by the rules, go through proper channels, wait for lawyers and judges. But we're out of time for rules. You want to go get Matthew? Tonight? Peter's eyes widened. That's kidnapping. Actual kidnapping this time. Not if you're with us, Carol said slowly, catching on to my plan. Peter, you have joint custody. You have every legal right to take your son out of that house. If we get Matthew somewhere safe, somewhere Chrissy can't reach him until we can get before a judge, she'll lose her mind, Peter said. She'll call the police, press charges. Let her, I said. We'll have Matthew. We'll have his testimony, his recordings, all the evidence he's collected. And we'll have you, his father, saying you removed him from an unsafe situation. That changes everything. Peter stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the darkening sky. I've been afraid of her for so long, he said quietly. Afraid of the fights, the manipulation, the way she makes me feel like I'm crazy for questioning her. But you know what I'm more afraid of? He turned back to us. Losing my son, not seeing him for months or years while he's locked up in that place. Getting him back broken, if I get him back at all. His jaw set with determination. Let's go get Matthew. We made our plans quickly. Carol would stay at the farmhouse, prepared to file emergency motions if things went wrong. Peter would go to the house first, pretending he'd come home to reconcile with Chrissy. While she was distracted, I would enter through the back, the door Peter would leave unlocked, and get Matthew out. It was risky. It was probably illegal. It was definitely going to make everything worse. But it was the only option we had left. At 6 p.m., we set out. Peter in his SUV, me following 15 minutes behind in my old pickup truck. The roads were quiet. Most people home for Christmas Eve preparations. Houses glowed with colored lights, warm and festive. Normal families doing normal things. We were about to shatter what was left of ours. I parked 2 streets over and walked through the neighbor's yard, staying in the shadows. Peter and Chrissy's house was a sprawling colonial in an expensive development, all white columns and black shutters. Through the windows, I could see Chrissy in the living room, Peter standing near the door, their body language tense. The back door was unlocked as promised. I slipped inside. The house was different from the warm farmhouse I'd raised Peter in. Everything here was pristine, staged, more like a magazine spread than a home. No photos on the walls, no comfortable clutter, no signs that a child lived here at all. I moved quietly up the stairs, counting doors until I reached Matthew's room. Knocked softly. Matthew, it's Grandma. The door opened a crack. Matthew's eye appeared, then widened. He pulled me inside quickly, shutting the door behind us. "What are you doing here?" he whispered. "If Mom finds you, your dad's downstairs keeping her distracted. We're getting you out of here. But the van isn't taking you anywhere. Pack a bag, clothes for a few days, anything important. We need to move fast." Matthew grabbed a backpack from his closet, started shoving things inside. "Grandma, there's something else. Something I didn't send you yet. It's bad." "How bad?" He pulled out his laptop, opened a folder. "Mom's been using the trust fund money for more than just the school. Look." The screen showed bank transactions, dozens of them. Transfers from Matthew's trust account to various places. Credit card payments, a luxury car purchase, renovations to this house. Over $200,000 total spent over the past year. "She's been stealing from you for months," I said, my voice hollow. "That's not even the worst part." Matthew clicked to another file. "I found her emails with Riverside. She's not sending me there because she thinks I need help. She's sending me there because they offered her a kickback. For every student she refers through her law firm's family services division, they pay her $25,000. I'm her first referral. She's planning to make it a regular thing, a pipeline from wealthy families to Riverside, and she gets paid for each kid she sends." The room spun. This wasn't just about control or image or even money. This was Chrissy running a criminal enterprise, trafficking troubled children to an abusive facility for profit. "Does your dad know about this?" Matthew shook his head. "Nobody knows. I've been saving it, trying to figure out what to do with it. We're going to stop her," I said. "But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." Voices rose from downstairs. Chrissy's voice, sharp and suspicious. "Why are you really here, Peter? What's going on?" "We need to go," I said. "Now." Matthew slung his backpack over his shoulder. We moved to the door, opened it carefully. Chrissy stood at the bottom of the stairs, her eyes locked on us. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. Behind her, Peter moved toward the front door, blocking it. Not blocking our escape, blocking hers. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We are." Chrissy's hand moved to her pocket, pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. You're trespassing. And you're attempting to abduct my son." "Our son," Peter corrected. "And I'm not letting you send him to Riverside. This is over, Chrissy." "Over?" Chrissy laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Peter, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually," Matthew said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it, "we do. We know about the kickbacks, the referral scheme, all of it." Chrissy's face went white, then red. "You've been spying on me?" "Documenting," Matthew corrected. "There's a difference." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Chrissy's expression shifted into something cold and calculating. "Fine," she said. "Take him. But understand what you're doing. By tomorrow morning, I'll have filed charges against Sharon for custodial interference and attempted fraud. I'll have her declared mentally incompetent. I'll have her farm seized for unpaid debts. Debts I can easily manufacture. And Peter?" She turned to my son. "I'll take everything in the divorce. The house, the savings, your pension, and I'll make sure you never work in this town again. My firm has connections everywhere. One word from me and you're unemployable." "Then I guess I'll have to move," Peter said quietly. Chrissy's composure cracked completely. She lunged forward, but Peter caught her, held her back as we hurried down the stairs. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "All of you! I'll destroy you!" We made it to my truck, Matthew scrambling into the passenger seat, Peter running to his SUV. As we pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Chrissy standing in the driveway, her phone to her ear, her face twisted with rage. "She's calling someone," Matthew said. "I know. What do we do now?" I thought about the evidence, about Carol waiting at the farmhouse, about the precarious position we were all in. We'd just crossed a line. There was no going back. "Now," I said, "we finish this." We made it back to the farmhouse at 7:30. Carol met us at the door, her face tight with concern. "The police scanner's been going crazy. Chrissy filed a report. Kidnapping, custodial interference, grand theft. She's claiming you stole documents and money from her home." "Money?" Peter looked bewildered. "We didn't take any money." "She's fabricating evidence. Carol said, trying to muddy the waters, make you look like the criminals. She ushered us inside. But we have bigger problems. I just got a call from Judge Myrick's clerk. Chrissy filed an emergency motion an hour ago, before you even got Matthew out. She was planning for this. What kind of motion? I asked. For immediate guardianship of Matthew, citing your mental incompetence and Peter's inability to make sound parental decisions. She has a psychiatrist ready to testify that you're experiencing cognitive decline and that Peter's under your undue influence. Carol spread papers across the kitchen table. The hearing is set for tomorrow morning, Christmas Eve, 9 a.m. Judge Myrick agreed to hear it on an emergency basis. That's impossible, I said. How did she arrange all this so quickly? Because she's been planning it for weeks, Matthew said quietly. He'd set up his laptop on the table, was pulling up files. Look, I found emails from 3 weeks ago. She's been coordinating with Judge Myrick's office, with Dr. Keller, with her law firm. This wasn't a backup plan. This was always the plan. The screen showed an email chain between Chrissy and someone named Harold Myrick, the judge's brother, I realized with a sinking feeling. A lawyer in Chrissy's firm. Harold. I spoke with my brother. He's sympathetic to your situation. The grandmother's age and isolation make a strong case for incompetence, especially with the right documentation. Chrissy. Dr. Keller will provide whatever assessments we need. He's very accommodating. Harold. Perfect. We'll schedule the hearing for Christmas Eve. Most of the family services offices will be closed. Limited oversight. Should be straightforward. She's bought a judge, Peter said, his voice hollow. Or close enough to it. Carol's jaw tightened. This is beyond unethical. If we can prove coordination between Chrissy and the judge through his brother, we can get Myrick recused. But we need time to file the proper motions, and we don't have time. Then we don't play by their timeline, I said. We go public. Now. Tonight. With what? Carol asked. We have evidence of fraud, yes, but without proper authentication. Without expert witnesses, a judge could dismiss it as hearsay or fabrication. Chrissy will claim the recordings were doctored, that Matthew's a troubled child being manipulated. Then we don't just show the recordings, Matthew interrupted. We show everything. The bank records, the emails with Riverside, the kickback scheme. We make it so big, so obvious that they can't ignore it. Who's they? Peter asked. Everyone. Matthew's fingers flew across the keyboard. I've been building a website. It's not live yet, but it has everything. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. If we publish it, if we send it to the news stations, the police, the state attorney general, they can't bury it. Too many people will see it. That's dangerous, Carol warned. Once information's public, you can't control it. Chrissy will argue you've poisoned the jury pool, that Matthew can never get a fair hearing. And Sharon, if this blows up in the media, you'll be dragged through the mud. Chrissy will make sure of it. I don't care, I said. If it protects Matthew, I don't care what happens to me. Mom, Peter started. No, I held up my hand. Chrissy threatened to take my farm, my freedom, my reputation. She can have all of it, but she doesn't get Matthew. She doesn't get to hurt him or use him or sell him to make money. That's where I draw the line. The room fell silent. Through the window, I could see my farm stretching out into darkness. 60 acres Thomas and I had worked for 40 years. The land that held our history, our sweat, our dreams. The thought of losing it ached like a physical wound. But some things matter more than land. Grandma. Matthew's voice was small. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. I moved to his side, put my hand on his shoulder. You're not making me lose anything. Chrissy is. And whatever happens, we face it together. Understand? He nodded, tears tracking down his face. So we publish it, Peter said. We put everything online and we send it everywhere. But we need to do it right. We need to make sure the right people see it first thing in the morning, before the hearing. Carol checked her watch. It's 8 p.m. now. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. I have contacts at the local news station, at the state police, at Child Protective Services. But Sharon, you need to understand. This will get ugly. Chrissy won't go down quietly. I'm counting on it, I said. The more she fights, the more guilty she looks. We worked through the night. Carol made calls, sending encrypted files to journalists and investigators. Matthew uploaded everything to his website, organized by category: fraud, abuse, corruption. Peter drafted a statement explaining his role, his regret, his commitment to protecting his son, and I wrote a letter. Not to a judge or a lawyer or a journalist, to Chrissy. Chrissy, by the time you read this, everything you've done will be public knowledge. The fraud, the kickbacks, the scheme with Riverside Academy, all of it. You'll probably survive this. People like you usually do. You'll hire expensive lawyers, you'll spin the story, you'll find someone else to blame. But you won't have Matthew. And you won't have Peter. And that's something all your money and connections can't fix. You made a mistake. You thought we were weak. An old woman, a passive husband, a child you could control. You thought age meant frailty, that love meant blindness, that fear meant compliance. You were wrong. I'm not frail. I'm steel wrapped in soft cotton. I've survived things you can't imagine. Losing my husband, keeping this farm alive, raising a good son despite the hardships. And I will survive you. Peter's not passive. He's careful and kind, which you mistook for weakness. But careful men who've been pushed too far are the most dangerous kind, because they don't act until they're certain. And now he's certain about you. And Matthew? He's not a troubled child. He's brilliant and brave and stronger than either of us realized. He documented everything, saved every piece of evidence, built an entire case against you while you thought you were controlling him. You lost this battle before it even started. You just didn't know it yet. Don't come looking for us. Don't call. Don't threaten. Don't make this worse than it already is. Whatever life you build from here, build it far away from my family. Sharon McCarthy. I sealed the letter in an envelope, addressed it to Chrissy's office. She'd get it tomorrow morning, right around the time the news broke. At 3 a.m., Matthew hit the publish button. The website went live, a comprehensive archive of Chrissy's crimes laid out in damning detail. Within minutes, Carol's contacts began responding. Shock, promises to investigate, requests for interviews. By 4 a.m., the first news station had picked up the story. Local attorney accused of child trafficking scheme scrolled across the bottom of the screen as an overnight anchor read through the basics, promising more coverage in the morning. By 5 a.m., 3 more stations had the story. Social media began lighting up. Someone found Chrissy's professional page, started sharing it with comments. The firm she worked for issued a hasty statement. We are aware of allegations against one of our partners and are conducting an internal review. Peter paced the living room, watching the news, his phone buzzing with calls and texts from coworkers, friends, family members. He didn't answer any of them. Matthew sat with his laptop, monitoring traffic to the website, watching the view counter climb. 15,000 visitors, he said quietly. 20,000, 30,000. Carol fielded calls from reporters, from investigators, from the state attorney general's office. Yes, we have documentation. Yes, we're prepared to testify. Yes, we'll cooperate fully with any investigation. I sat in Thomas's old chair and watched my family fight back. After years of Chrissy's manipulation, of her slow poisoning of our relationships, we were finally pushing back. Together. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Chrissy's name flashed on the screen. I answered. You destroyed me. Her voice was raw, broken. You destroyed my career, my reputation, everything I built. No, I said calmly. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure people knew about it. I'll sue you for defamation. I'll sue you for everything. You're welcome to try. But Chrissy, everything on that website is true. Every document is authentic. Every recording is real. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. I paused. You taught me that. Back when you were trying to scare me with legal threats. Silence. Then, I want to see Matthew. No, he's my son. You can't keep me from him. Actually, I can. Peter has filed for emergency sole custody based on your criminal conduct and plans to endanger Matthew. The hearing is this morning, remember? though I suspect Judge Myrick might recuse himself now that his brother's involvement has been exposed. More silence. "How did you beat me?" Chrissy asked finally, and there was genuine bewilderment in her voice. You're nobody. A widow on a failing farm. How did you possibly beat me?" "Because you underestimated us," I said. "You thought age meant weakness. You thought love meant blindness. You thought fear meant surrender. But Chrissy, I've lived 62 years on this earth. I've buried a husband, saved a farm, raised a son. I've survived droughts and floods and bank foreclosures and every other thing life threw at me. You were just one more problem to solve. I'll find a way to come back from this," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "I always do." "Maybe," I said, "but you'll do it somewhere else, far away from my grandson." I hung up. At 7 a.m., 2 state police investigators arrived at the farmhouse. They were polite but firm. They needed to interview all of us, needed to examine the original documents, needed to build their case against Chrissy and anyone else involved in the scheme. We cooperated fully. Matthew walked them through his evidence collection, explaining how he'd hidden cameras, saved emails, documented everything. The investigators looked at him with a mixture of admiration and sadness. No 12-year-old should have to become a detective in his own home. Peter gave his statement, his voice shaking as he admitted his failures, his willingness to look away, his choice to believe Chrissy's lies rather than trust his own son. "I was a coward," he said. "I let her manipulate me because it was easier than standing up to her. I'll spend the rest of my life making that up to Matthew." Carol provided her legal analysis, her contacts at various agencies, her willingness to testify about Chrissy's fraud and the coordinated scheme involving Judge Myrick's brother, and I gave them the USB drive. The original, the one Matthew had slipped into my pocket 3 days ago, when the world was different and our family was still pretending to be whole. "This took courage," one of the investigators said to Matthew. "What you did, documenting all of this, getting it to your grandmother, that took real courage." Matthew shook his head. "I was just scared. I didn't want to go to that place." "Being scared and doing it anyway?" The investigator smiled. "That's the definition of courage, son." At 8:30, Carol's phone rang. She stepped outside to take it, came back in with a strange expression. "Judge Myrick has recused himself. The hearing's been postponed until after Christmas, and they're assigning a new judge. In the meantime, they've issued an emergency order granting Peter temporary sole custody and requiring Chrissy to stay at least 500 feet away from Matthew." "We won?" Matthew asked, disbelief in his voice. "We won this round," Carol corrected. "There will be more battles, criminal trials, custody hearings, civil suits. This is far from over. But Matthew's safe," I said. "That's what matters." Peter pulled his son into a hug, and I watched them hold each other, both of them crying, both of them finally free from Chrissy's shadow. Outside, dawn broke over the farm. Christmas Eve morning, and the world was covered in fresh snow, clean and white and new. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number, probably Chrissy using a different phone. "You think you've won, but you've made an enemy. And I don't forget." I deleted the message without responding. Some threats aren't worth acknowledging. The investigators finished their interviews around noon. They left with boxes of evidence, promises to keep us informed, warnings about media attention. News vans had already started appearing at the end of my driveway, kept at bay by the no trespassing signs but clearly not deterred. "You should probably stay here for a few days," Carol said. "Let the media frenzy die down. Don't talk to reporters without consulting me first." "What about Christmas?" Matthew asked quietly. "I mean tomorrow. Are we still going to—" He trailed off, and I understood what he wasn't saying. Chrissy had always orchestrated their Christmases, the expensive presents, the catered dinners, the holiday parties designed to impress the right people. None of it had been about family. It had all been about image. "We'll have Christmas here," I said. "On the farm, just us. We'll make cookies and watch old movies and maybe go for a walk in the snow. Nothing fancy, nothing perfect, just real." Matthew smiled, really smiled for the first time in days. "That sounds perfect, Grandma." And it would be. Not because everything was fixed or because the danger was completely past, but because we'd faced the darkness together and come through on the other side. Because we'd chosen each other over comfort, truth over convenience, courage over fear. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply refuse to give up. Christmas morning arrived quietly. No dramatic revelations, no midnight phone calls, no police at the door. Just snow falling softly outside the farmhouse windows and the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the old oven. Matthew shuffled into the kitchen in his pajamas, the ones that were finally the right size, bought on a quick trip to town the day before. His hair stuck up in the back, and there were still shadows under his eyes, but he looked younger somehow, lighter. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, sliding a plate toward him. "Merry Christmas, Grandma." He took a bite, then looked toward the living room where Peter slept on the couch, wrapped in blankets. "Is Dad okay?" "He's processing," I said. "Give him time." The past 3 days had been a whirlwind. After the story broke, Chrissy's law firm had placed her on immediate administrative leave. The State Bar Association opened an ethics investigation. Dr. Keller's medical license was suspended pending review. Riverside Academy faced a federal investigation into their practices and their financial arrangements with referring professionals. And Judge Myrick's brother Harold had resigned from Chrissy's firm, though not before giving a statement to investigators about the coordination between his brother and Chrissy. It turned out we hadn't been the only family Chrissy had targeted. Once the story went public, 3 other families came forward with similar experiences. Children sent to Riverside Academy after Chrissy's recommendations. Kickback payments traced back to accounts she controlled, forged documents, and manipulated evaluations. The scope of her operation had been larger than we'd imagined. "Do you think she'll go to jail?" Matthew asked quietly. "I don't know," I said honestly. Rich people with good lawyers often find ways to avoid consequences. But even if she doesn't, her career is over. Her reputation is destroyed. And she'll never be able to hurt another child the way she tried to hurt you. Matthew nodded slowly. "I feel bad for Dad. I know he loved her once. He loved who he thought she was." I corrected gently. "Sometimes that's not the same person." Peter stirred in the living room, sat up groggily. He looked around for a moment, disoriented, then seemed to remember where he was. His eyes found Matthew and me in the kitchen, and relief flooded his face. "Still here," I called to him. "Still safe." He came into the kitchen, accepted the coffee I poured for him. We sat together at the table, the 3 of us. And for a moment, nobody spoke. Just the sound of snow against the windows and the old house settling around us. "I filed for divorce yesterday," Peter said finally. "Emergency petition. Carol helped me with the paperwork." "How do you feel about that?" I asked. He considered the question. Relieved, scared, guilty, all of it at once. He looked at Matthew. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner. I'm sorry I let it get this far. You're protecting me now," Matthew said. "That's what matters." "No, it's not enough. I should have—" Peter's voice cracked. "I should have seen what she was doing, should have questioned things, stood up to her, believed you when you tried to tell me something was wrong. She was really good at manipulation," Matthew said with the wisdom of someone who'd lived through it. "She made you think questioning her meant you were weak or paranoid. That's what abusers do." The word hung in the air. Abuser. We'd all been dancing around it, using softer terms. Controlling, manipulative, difficult. But Matthew had named it plainly. "You're right," Peter said. "She was an abuser, and I enabled her by staying silent, by choosing peace over your safety. That's on me." "Dad, stop." Matthew reached across the table, put his hand over his father's. "You're out now. We both are. That's what matters." I watched them, my son and my grandson, beginning the hard work of healing. It would take time, months, maybe years, therapy and difficult conversations and moments of doubt. But they had something Chrissy had never understood. They had love. Real love. Not the performative kind that looked good from the outside but rotted from within. After breakfast, we opened presents. Small things. I'd managed to get Matthew a few books he'd been wanting. and Peter had stopped at a store on his way over and bought me a new kettle to replace the one that had finally given up after 30 years. Simple gifts, but genuine. Matthew gave us each something unexpected, printed and framed photographs. For Peter, a picture from 5 years ago. Father and son at the lake, both laughing, ice cream cones in hand. Before Chrissy had tightened her grip, before the world had gotten complicated. For me, he'd found a photo I didn't know existed. Thomas and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful, standing in front of this very farmhouse. Matthew had discovered it in a box in the attic, had it restored and framed. "So you remember," Matthew said softly, "that good things can last, that this place has always been about love." I held the frame and cried. Good tears this time, healing tears. Around noon, Carol stopped by with news. The prosecutor's office called. They're charging Chrissy with fraud, embezzlement, and child endangerment. With the evidence Matthew collected and the testimony from other families, they're confident about conviction. "What's the timeline?" Peter asked. "Arraignment in 2 weeks. Trial probably won't start for 6 months, maybe longer. But in the meantime, the restraining order stays in place. She can't contact any of you, can't come within 500 feet of Matthew or this property." "What about the trust fund?" I asked. "The money she stole? That's civil court, separate process. But we've already filed suit for full restitution plus damages. Her assets are being frozen as we speak." Carol smiled grimly. She won't enjoy the holidays much. After Carol left, we bundled up and went for a walk around the farm. The snow had stopped, leaving everything pristine and white. Matthew ran ahead, making footprints in the fresh powder, throwing snowballs at tree trunks, acting like the child he still was, the one Chrissy had tried to steal from him. "Mom," Peter said as we walked, "I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next. And I want Matthew to stay here, with you, at least for a while. I'll be going through a divorce, probably moving to a smaller place, dealing with lawyers and court dates. This is stable. This is safe. And honestly," he looked at me, "you're better at this than I am. You always have been. Peter, I'm 62 years old. I don't know if I have the energy to raise a 12-year-old full-time. You don't have to do it alone. I'll be here every day after work, weekends, whatever you need. We'll be co-parenting, really co-parenting this time. Not the way Chrissy and I did it, where she made all the decisions and I just nodded along." I thought about it. Thought about Matthew's room upstairs, the one he'd stayed in during visits, the one that could become his permanently. Thought about the farmhouse filled with life again, with noise and homework and teenage drama. Thought about being needed, being essential, being more than just the grandmother who got weekend visits. "On one condition," I said. "Anything. You talk to someone, a therapist, a counselor, someone who can help you process what you've been through, what we've all been through. You can't heal from this kind of manipulation alone." Peter nodded. "Already scheduled my first appointment. Carol recommended someone who specializes in domestic abuse survivors." "You're calling yourself a survivor now," I observed. "That's what the intake counselor called me. It felt strange at first, but yeah, I survived something. We all did." That evening we made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad and garlic bread. But we cooked it as a team, Matthew setting the table, Peter making the sauce, me supervising and correcting and laughing when they got things wrong. Over dinner, we talked about practical things. School, Matthew would transfer to the local district after the holidays. Therapy, we'd found a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. The trial, how we'd prepare, what to expect, how to protect Matthew from media attention. But we also talked about normal things. Movies we wanted to see, books we wanted to read, places we might visit when the weather warmed up. Building a future instead of just surviving the present. After dinner, Matthew helped me with the dishes while Peter built a fire in the living room fireplace. Thomas had loved fires, had spent winter evenings sitting in front of them reading or just watching the flames dance. "Grandma," Matthew said as he dried a plate, "do you think I'll ever stop feeling angry at her? At your mother?" He nodded. "Part of me still loves her, or loves who I thought she was, but mostly I'm just angry. At what she did, what she almost did. Is that okay? It's more than okay, I said. Anger is healthy when it's justified. It protects you, tells you when boundaries have been crossed. You don't have to forgive her, Matthew. Not now, maybe not ever. You just have to heal from what she did. Did you ever have to deal with someone like her? Someone who hurt you? I thought about my own mother, about leaving home at 17 because staying would have destroyed me, about the years it took to build a life free from her influence, to stop hearing her critical voice in my head. Yes, I said simply. And it took me a long time to understand that walking away wasn't weakness. It was strength. Is that what we did? Walked away? No, sweetheart. What you did was braver. You documented the truth. You built a case. You fought back. Walking away is sometimes the only option, but you found another way. You exposed what was happening so other kids wouldn't go through it. Matthew was quiet for a moment. The prosecutor said 4 other families have come forward now. Kids who were sent to Riverside or almost were. Because of what I did, what we did, they're investigating the whole system. You should be proud of that. I am, I think. Mostly I'm just tired. I hugged him, this brave, broken, healing boy. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to rest now. That's what this place is for. Later, we sat by the fire, the 3 of us. Matthew fell asleep, curled up in the armchair, exhausted from 3 days of adrenaline and fear finally catching up with him. Peter covered him with a blanket, then sat beside me on the couch. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on him, on us. That's what family does, I said. Real family. Not the performance art Chrissy was doing, but actual family. We show up. We fight for each other. We don't give up. I'm going to do better, Peter said. I'm going to be the father Matthew deserves. The son you deserve. You already are, I told him. You made hard choices these past few days. You chose right over easy. That's who you really are, Peter. You just forgot for a while. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Matthew sleep, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the farm lay quiet under its blanket of snow. 60 acres of memories and hard work and love. Chrissy had threatened to take it from me, had prepared papers to have me declared incompetent, to seize the property, to erase everything Thomas and I had built. But she'd failed. The farm was still mine. My independence was still intact. My grandson was safe. And I'd learned something important in the process. Age isn't weakness. Experience isn't obsolescence. The years I'd lived, the challenges I'd survived, the wisdom I'd accumulated, those weren't liabilities. They were weapons. Chrissy had underestimated me because I was older, because I lived alone, because I seemed soft. She'd mistaken kindness for weakness, patience for passivity, love for blindness. It was a mistake people had been making about grandmothers for centuries. We let them. We smile and bake cookies and seem harmless. We let people underestimate us because it's easier, because it's expected, because confrontation is exhausting. But when you threaten our families, when you try to hurt the children we love, that's when they discover what we really are. Steel wrapped in soft cotton, lions disguised as lambs, warriors who've simply chosen peace until peace is no longer an option. Chrissy had learned that lesson the hard way, and she'd never forget it. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The local station was running a story. Former attorney's child trafficking ring exposed. 4 additional victims come forward. I deleted it without reading further. That was Chrissy's story now, not ours. We were done being characters in her narrative. We were writing our own. Peter dozed off on the couch. Matthew slept in the chair. And I sat in Thomas's old spot by the fire, watching my family rest, watching the farmhouse shelter us the way it had sheltered generations before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles and media attention, and the slow work of healing. But tonight, Christmas night, we were safe. We were together, and we were free. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady, covering tracks, burying the past, making everything new. I thought about Matthew showing up at my door 3 days ago, covered in mud, terrified, desperate. thinking about the USB drive he'd slipped into my pocket, the trust he'd placed in me, the courage it had taken to ask for help. He'd saved himself by refusing to stay silent, by documenting the truth, by believing that someone would listen, and I'd saved him by refusing to give up, by using every tool I had, my connections, my experience, my stubborn determination to protect what I love. Together, we'd beaten someone younger, richer, more powerful, someone who'd had every advantage and used it to hurt people. But she'd made one fatal error. She'd assumed the battle would be fought with money and lawyers and manipulation. She'd forgotten that sometimes the strongest weapon is simply refusing to surrender. I pulled the Afghan tighter around my shoulders and closed my eyes, listening to the peaceful sounds of my family sleeping, my farmhouse settling, my life continuing. The early morning visitor had changed everything, but in the end, we'd changed it back. Only better this time. Only true. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.